Hello and welcome to the Wisden Cricket Weekly podcast. We've got loads lined up for you today. We have the final two T20s between India and England, a concussion sub controversy, and a record-breaking win for India over England in the series finale where Abhishek Sharma was quite good. We've got a brilliant interview with Tom Banton lined up. He's having a great time of it at the moment across all formats. We'll chat about the sale of the 100 and what that all means, the possibility of two-tier test cricket, some franchise fun, and we'll be seeing how the England Lions got on in Australia and more. I'm Yas Rana, and with me today are Ben Gardner and Phil Walker. Mark Butcher will be joining us shortly. Pretty village 5 minutes in here before we started going. Ben, you stepped in some shit just before you came into the studio.
Yeah, if I'd known you were going to bring it up, I wouldn't have told you. But I don't.
Well, you took your shoes off and put them in the walkway as we enter the office.
Yeah, which was
which is like a dirty protest.
It was also a very considerate move to you too. I mean, I could have just kept the shoes on, and then you'd have been thinking about 45 minutes in, what the hell is that smell? And instead, I did the gentlemanly thing and placed my shoes outside. But yeah, if there is an off vibe for the first 5 or 10 minutes, that's because. It's because of that.
You're not covered yourself in glory. You covered yourself in something else. Perhaps. Anyway, let's move on. Bad start though to the morning.
Yeah, bad start to the morning.
All round.
A reminder that we've been very busy and continue to be very busy on the Patreon. A reminder you can get that from £5 a month plus VAT. We've got dailies after every single England game, and they're playing a lot at the moment. We've had the 5 T20s, we've got the 3 ODIs against India, and then the Champions Trophy that starts 2 weeks today. We've also had Graham Onions on the show recently. He was the latest guest in the Bubble series with Joe Harmon. And this week, me and Ben will be looking at some of England's most underrated cricketers of the last 20 or 30 years.
I'm not saying this to complain at all. In fact, the opposite perhaps. But I've been stood down from the Patreon scene. Yes,
I don't think you have. You just had a week off.
Rested. It's more than a week.
Well, you're on Sunday, Phil. Me and you doing the daily for the ODI, remember?
Right.
You fully booked in? Did you forgotten that?
This coming Sunday?
This coming Sunday, yeah.
Ah. Who's playing? The ODI. Well, okay.
The one international, yeah.
Right.
50 over.
Sharma's playing, isn't he?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I'll tune in. I'll tune in for that. Or I'll certainly follow it on my phone or something.
Rest assured that we have watched the cricket that we're about to talk about on today's show. If you're feeling the blues this winter, you need to hear this. 90% of men with low testosterone are suffering the symptoms without knowing why. Last week, I took the manual test myself and had the results within 5 days. I'm all good, by the way.
No doubt. I could have told you that without the test, in fairness.
1 in 4 men in the UK suffer from low testosterone levels, and you might be one of them. The at-home blood test kit from Manual is ridiculously quick and easy to do, and you find out your results very quickly and what might be causing you to have symptoms like a lack of focus, low energy, sudden weight gain, or poor sleep quality. If you've got low testosterone, Manual's doctors will be on hand to help. 30,000 men have already taken their test and are benefiting from Manual's testosterone replacement service, with 86% of patients recording an improvement in their energy levels and enjoyment of life after just 3 months. So check in with yourself, try a test kit and save 45% on your testosterone test kit with the code weekly45 at checkout.
Can I do one?
You can. You are so welcome.
How long does it take?
It took me about 5 minutes.
Right.
You do a blood test on yourself, which I found quite exciting.
Yeah, sure.
And then you post off the
tube of blood,
the vial,
right.
and then
you're on tenterhooks, right?
Yeah. And then it almost like waiting for your exam results. You get an email that comes through and it says your Manual results have arrived, and it's not just your testosterone levels; it's other stuff as well. I can't remember what the other stuff was because it just said good for all of them. Yeah. So I'm healthy.
But you're in your absolute prime, yes.
I'm in my prime.
But also, if it's 1 in 4 men, I've done it as well, and I wasn't low either. So it's a 50% chance that you've got it.
I don't think that's how maths works. And you went to Oxford to study it. But anyway, I'm going to do one, and I shall report back.
Anyway, here is Mark Butcher, starting with our moment of the week that was the controversial concussion sub, where Yas Rana, a frontline quick, acted as Shivam Dube's replacement for India.
No testosterone problems with Mark.
But 2 T20s took place since we last spoke. The fourth one was rather controversial. The fifth one was an absolute shellacking. Let's start with the fourth one, where the headline news was the concussion substitution. Shivam Dube off, Harshit Rana in. Dube had bowled 1 over in India's 8 T20 World Cup games. Harshit Rana bowled 4 overs in the back end of the innings, bowling between 85 and 92 miles per hour. I'll read out the regs later, but what were your impressions on that? Obviously, you need concussion provisions, but this felt like, as Josh Butler said at the toss the next day, England had 4 impact subs.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was wrong, wasn't it? I mean, they got it wrong. The regulations. I mean, I understand why there are concussion protocols, because you now have to remove players whether, if there's a suspicion that they might have it. And so under those circumstances, it's not the same as any other injury on the ground, where you could be pulling a fast one or you're just unlucky and you've broken a leg. However, the stipulations are pretty damn clear that it has to be a like for like replacement. And they were, they were not. It's a shame that it kind of overshadowed some, terrific performances once again, largely by the Indian side. But I mean, it did change the game. England were in with a shout of staying in the series up until that point. But I suppose you could argue that a sort of 85 to 90 mile an hour medium pacer was right up our street.
I guess there's a serious point to be made in that this is a relatively new regulation that's come in for the safety of players. And if you want people to take it seriously, the rule needs to be implemented seriously. And
yes,
match referees are generally, let's face it, globally pretty hands off, right? They don't intervene that much in most games of cricket. But this is actually one area where the rules, I think, do need to be implemented pretty strictly. Because I'll just read out the rules because people might not have seen them before. So the ICC match referee should ordinarily approve a concussion replacement request if the replacement is a like-for-like player whose inclusion will not excessively advantage his or her team for the remainder of the match. I think, Shivam Dube, I reckon, has probably never bowled 4 overs in the back half of a T20, and he's definitely not bowled 92 miles per hour in a T20 game before. So if you want teams to take it seriously, I think you do need to implement it quite strictly.
Yeah, I think by and large, up until, because it's been, I'm not quite sure how long it's been a thing now, but it has been quite a significant amount of time. It's over 5 years, probably even longer than that. And I don't remember there ever being sort of quite such a controversy. And of course, when it happens in a T20 game, because the parts, the facets that you've picked in your 11 tend to have very specific jobs and very specific roles, so they're incredibly important. You could argue that in the longer form of the game, it doesn't make quite so much of a difference. Although I suppose if you're playing on a Bunsen and you replace a medium pace all rounder with a mystery spinner, then you've got a bit of a problem. But you get the point. And the fact that up until now there's been very little, maybe the odd sort of slight controversy over not quite a like for like replacement, but I think this one was wildly wrong and shouldn't have happened.
Yeah, I don't think you can see that in also that India had someone on the bench who would have been a like for like substitution. Ramandeep Singh has a practically identical wickets per game ratio in T20 cricket. He's a batting all-rounder who sometimes but does not always bowl. But anyway, the main takeaway from the series for me was India's batting, actually, because a lot of English viewers who don't watch the IPL would have probably been seeing these guys for the first time, and they had a very futuristic feel to that top 6. The Abhishek Sharma 100 in the 5th game was extraordinary. 37 balls, the 3rd quickest in a T20I between 2 full member countries. It was amazing batting. And there's a lot of negativity around England and the tactics and the bowling, etc. But first and foremost, that the ball striking there was otherworldly.
It was absolutely incredible. You got Wood. Castbold ended up going pretty well. Arch bowling serious heat on a pitch that had a bit of carry. Didn't do much, but it had some pace and bounce in it. And it was absolutely phenomenal batting. It really was. I don't think people quite understand not only the skill and the hand-eye coordination, but the courage involved in going that hard at people who are going that hard at you with that sort of pace. you get a pull shot or a hook shot slightly wrong, and you're in the hospital. So not only is the ball striking incredible, but just the kind of like the sheer courage to sort of stand there and take all that on. I thought it was an incredible spectacle. I mean, regardless of what you think of England's plan to sort of go at India with predominantly high pace in T20 cricket, and everybody knows, the faster it goes, the faster you bowl it, the faster it goes off the bat. But oh my God, I'd have sat and watched that anytime. It was like, it's sort of reminiscent of Viv taking on Hogg and Pascoe on lively ones at the Wacker with no helmets on. It was that kind of gladiatorial. The faster you bowl it at me, the further I'm going to try and hit it. It was sensational. That was a great advert for T20 cricket. That was the advert for T20 cricket.
And there's so much talk nowadays about intent in T20 cricket, and it almost makes you forget that underneath that you need to have an immense level of skill. And yes. It's extraordinary from Abhishek Sharma, because England were bowling seriously quickly, and you're right to say that the quicker it comes down at you, the quicker it can go, but only if you can see it.
Only if you can see it and hit it. Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, it was fabulous. I would challenge even the most churlish of old timers or sort of grumpy Test match only fans and supporters not to have enjoyed it, because it was an incredible feat of skill and daring and all the rest of it.
There has been some negativity around England's tactics for the series, in that they went very heavy on pace. And on paper, it's a relatively one-dimensional attack. Four right-arm seamers who bowl at a similar pace. It's how England are going in Test cricket, and it's worked by and large pretty well over the last 6 to 8 months since Anderson and Broad retired. What did you make of that way of going about things in the T20 series? Because it worked at times. Actually, all of the seamers had good moments in the first 4 games of the series, but it really didn't work in the 5th game.
No, I mean, I struggle to kind of. You can argue with the logic, I suppose, but then the question is, okay, well, which of your sort of wily, left arm seamers, off spinners, regulation finger spin bowlers, because obviously Adil Rashid got plundered as well. Which of those guys would have made a massive amount of difference against that sort of level of ferocity from India? And the answer is probably not very many. If any at all, that we could call upon. So I'm quite happy to kind of go with it as these are the best guys we've got. We're working on a slightly different way of doing things. India were far too good for us, no disgrace in that, at home. And it's something that needs a bit of polishing. So as you said, so Jamie Overton, his sort of role. Joff's been expensive quite a lot actually since he's come back, and I'm not entirely sure as to why that is. He seems rhythmically to be absolutely fine. He just doesn't seem to be sort of nailing either the good back of a length tight on off stump, and then being able to get that Yorker in quite as amazingly as he did when he first broke onto the scene. Now, whether that's just a lack of match sharpness or whatever, I don't know. But by and large, it kind of like I still think the Mark Wood thing is a conundrum for me. I don't think he's ever quite been the weapon in T20 cricket for us that his continued selection says he is. And I don't know. Again, I've said this before. I still think that him with a white ball, he might be better off having it when it's swinging. First up. To give him something, how dangerous he is in Test matches when he gets that ball swinging back into left-handers or swinging away from right-handers. I just think that he ends up being hit very, very hittable, despite the speed, because of his sort of flatter trajectory and all the rest of it. So I don't know. There's some tweaking to be done. And at the end of the day, kind of batting wise, England found themselves not being good enough to withstand the very different style of attack that India threw at it. So there are a lot of things that need a bit of work. Personnel wise, I still think you've got the you've got the best guys for the job. I'm not entirely sure that there are others that I would have thrown in there instead. But all of this, and McCullum's kind of, his ethos in terms of sort of just go harder, keep coming, and all the rest of it is yet to kind of really sort of bed in with this group in the way that it's done in test matches. And let's face it, in test matches, you can afford to kind of go up and down the gears a little bit, even though it seems so England don't. But in the T20 game, particularly against opposition as good as India, that luxury is not afforded to you. So work to be done. It's not a disgrace. It's not a disaster. It was just kind of a little bit worrying that what looks like on paper England's kind of best equipped white ball, short form sort of team got put to the sword in quite such a sensational fashion by India. But I think that just proves how good they are, right?
No, absolutely. The other big piece of news this week was the ongoing sale of the 100. I think at the time of recording, 6 of the 8 franchises have been sold off for an extraordinary amount of money. I think it's worth remembering that 2 years ago, the ECB had an offer for the entire competition that was worth £400 million. The valuation that we've seen in the last week or so is way, way above that. So on that front, the ECB have done a very good job, and that was, in hindsight, a good decision, one they were criticised for in some quarters. What was your overall feeling about it? Because there's a very good piece in The Guardian by Jonathan Liu that essentially compares the sale of the 100 to the sale of a luxury banana for £5 million at an art exhibition a couple of years ago, in that it's not entirely clear what you're buying, right? Because the teams are, the grounds aren't owned by the teams. The players and coaching staff are on freelance contracts that only last 3 or 4 weeks. So it's not really clear what you're buying. The people who are buying it are so extraordinarily rich that for them it's not that big a deal potentially. But for English cricket, it's a huge deal. So how do you see it?
Yeah, it's been an extraordinary week, hasn't it? It's an incredible amount of money, and the game has been shored up. There are a lot of holes in the sort of balance sheet for English cricket, and a lot of enterprises that are being kept alive by money making, by revenue that doesn't come from themselves. And so this amount of money kind of shores all of that up. The question is whether or not that was the intention, whether or not you've put something that was very much on life support. You've prolonged the contract for that life support for 20 years and sort of kept a status quo that perhaps you weren't all that interested in keeping in the first place. In unintended consequences of all this money coming into the game is that your 18 county system and all the rest of it is now kind of set in stone for the next 10, 15, 20 years. So whether that was entirely the intention, I'm not completely sure, but there are a lot of people that are going to be very happy about the money. Secondly, my feeling is that nothing will ever be the same again from here. As you quite rightly say, the money that has been put into the game and the people who have put it in, means wildly different things to the two people. To English cricket, it's kind of a sigh of relief, and my goodness, haven't we done well? And isn't that extraordinary? And we're sort of back in the black again, or some people are back in the black again. For the people that have invested, it isn't a lot of money at all, really not. And then the question, I suppose, is what are they going to want? How are they going to want to get their returns? And how are they going to sort of inveigle their way into, even though they're not majority shareholders, but how are they going to ensure that investment that they have made, as small as it is to them, starts to pay dividends in the long run? These are not sort of charitable organisations. They expect a return for their buck, and what is that going to look like as we go further and further into this whole thing?
So the question a lot of people had is, what are they actually buying? And I think the most tangible thing you can say is they've basically bought the month of August.
They bought August, yes.
They've split up August, basically, in different locations and different teams, but essentially that's what they've bought. And the worry is, right, they will want more than August, and this doesn't 100% safeguard the other months.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the other leagues, going back to 2007 with the IPL, and that's that's expansion. The expansion of that over, what are we now? 10 weeks. Started off at 4, 8 teams, went to 10. There are any number of ways in which this could change. That it could go from the 100 to T20. It wouldn't surprise me at all if that happened at some point, which some people would love and other people would hate. I don't know. I don't really have a view on it. I suspect that it's probably, in terms of any sort of relevance everywhere else in the world, that T20 would be the thing that it would become. It's just the impact that it would then have on the rest of the English summer, I suppose. And that's, ours is very short in comparison to most others anyway. Given that summer really is only sort of 3 months of the year for us, and we try and get the best that we can out of the other 3.
And a warning sign would be what we've seen in South Africa, right? So in 25, 26, so next home South African summer, South Africa aren't playing a home test match. That would have been totally unthinkable 10 years ago. But that's how quickly these things can change, and often and these changes are unforeseen.
Could be world test champions at come the end of June, and they have no touring team for test match cricket in the 25-26 summer. I mean, we're a long way off that. I think English cricket and its relationship to test match cricket is very different, I think, to quite a lot of other places, everywhere barring sort of Australia and India, I guess. But even so, people don't put these sums of money into something in order to then take a back seat and say, well, you just carry on the way that you were. There is a price to be paid for this down the line. What that is, we don't know yet. And it's, I don't know. I don't know whether I should be sort of jumping for joy and thinking this is the greatest thing to ever happen to English cricket. Imagine all that cash sloshing around. But it's kind of like, well, okay, well, what happens? What gets done with it? I guess some debt gets written off with it. There'll be clamours for new grounds to be built in various locations, facilities to be upgraded, all of these types of things. And then what?
As you say, things will never be the same. We'll be fascinated
They
to
will
see
never be the same.
how it plays out. Well, enjoy the end of the SA20 and catch you next week.
Yes, I'll be flying home very shortly.
Ben, going back to that infamous concussion sub, it's good to see that Dubé recovered in time for the 5th game, and objectively very funny that he took a wicket with his first ball in that one. Seriously though, Sunil Gavaskar effectively accused India of cheating. He wrote that Dubé was clearly not concussed. If we're going to take this rule seriously, if players are going to take this rule seriously, which is a rule that was brought in for their own safety, there needs to be a level of transparency that we've not really seen with this case.
Yeah, I think so, and especially because Gavaskar said that, and he also basically called for the rule to be removed, which is kind of a legitimate thing to say if you think teams are going to take advantage of it in this way. Like, you don't have to suggest India are doing that, but they could definitely be doing more to dispel that impression, which is kind of gathering.
So our Wisden India colleagues have tried to dig deep into this, and
haven't got much response. Basically, when he was named in the 11 for the 5th T20I, they just said, he's been declared fit to play. All they said about Dubé, and then we press them on what's the timeline? Was he ever diagnosed with concussion? Or because the thing that can happen with the concussion stuff, because it is there, as an to make sure definitely that nothing bad happens, is that you can be ruled out if you just have suspected concussion. So I guess it's possible that there was, and I guess this must be the case if we're giving everyone the benefit of the doubt, that there was suspected concussion somehow that was eventually cleared, and therefore there was no need for a kind of return to play period of recovery. But if that is the case, and if there is a timeline that shows clearly, when stuff was suspected, when stuff was cleared, I think just lay that out, and then you end up with, dispelling at least some of this, even though you can still question the actual sub that was made and approved by the match referee.
Onto the cricket itself, Phil, the Cricinfo writer Sid Monga posed a question the other day about whether India are the greatest T20 side ever. They've won 26 of their last 29 completed games. That's a run that includes them winning the T20 World Cup in the Caribbean in the US last year. Half the side who won that World Cup have either retired or not been available since. They've thrashed a first choice England side without Bumrah or Kuldeep. Jaiswal and Gill can't get in the team. It's a fair question to ask.
Yeah, I mean, it's reaping what they've sown. If you produce a world-class tournament that is lucrative on a level that is comparable to other great sporting phenomena around the world, and if you make an already cricket-obsessed nation, if you deliver a tournament as powerful as the IPL, where you are playing against the world's best and you're foregrounding your own kids, your own development kids in that kind of pressure cooker situation, then they come into it completely oven ready. They come into it all with nothing to fear, and nothing will surprise them. If you open the batting for KKR or whoever it is, then you are delivering yourself into a world that is scrutinized, highly pressurized, and essentially you're playing against World 11s or versions of World 11s every week. And so there's no reason to think that Abhishek, who is a joy, would come in and would feel anything other than this is just another game. And okay, it might mean a little bit more, but the pressure, the expectation, and the quality that you're facing, well, he's faced Mark Wood before. He's faced bowlers of extreme pace, and he's faced world-class spinners. He's shared nets with world-class spinners since he was 15. The point is that it's not just a great tournament, the IPL, but it's the perfect finishing school. It's the highest end finishing school that you can possibly get. And so so then you're picking from a vast number of players, all of whom have experienced and been exposed to that kind of level of cricket. There is also, I guess, an element now that you have moved away from the beasts of the previous generation, and so you are able to pick without fear and favour. Right.
It felt for a long time that the players were bigger than the team. That isn't the case now. One of our Wisden India colleagues, Rahul Iyer, made the point this week that India could almost select 3 different 11s for each format, and they'd be bloody good in all of them, using completely different players. And part of that, when Gill was coming through in particular, and Jaiswal as well, the assumption was these guys would become the next all-format giants in the same way that Rohit and Kohli were. But that's not actually happened. They've kept them from... Jaiswal's not played an ODI yet. Gill, despite having one of the great IPL seasons 2 years ago, isn't in the T20 side. They have managed to recalibrate the dynamics so that team is above players once again.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is that depth also allows them to select a team like no other setup is able to, in terms of constructing it almost like a franchise team, where you can actually look at being like, our team needs this exact profile of player. Who do we have who can do that? Whereas other teams are kind of, their team strategy is often dictated by the players they have available to them. Particularly in the case of Pakistan with their exceptional bowlers and their kind of consistent, Babur and Rizwan, they then play in that way. Whereas India can be like, look back to the T20 World Cup, and they had Rinku Singh had this ridiculous start to international cricket, and then Bay just didn't get a bat for his side that season because they were going so well. But then they realised, no, actually we need a guy who can really hit spin in particular in the middle order for this tournament. So we're going to go out and pick Shivam Dubé, and they can go out and say, right, we have so many options that we can do that. I think in some ways that's almost their biggest challenge at the moment, is and that's what makes Abhishek Sharma all the more remarkable, is to come in and play so freely when there are so many other options and so many players who are kind of waiting to take your place if there is a run of poor form. And we've seen it this series with Sanju Samson, who before this had made 300s in the space of about 6 months against South Africa and Bangladesh, I think, or Sri Lanka, one of the two, and then comes into this and gets out a few times playing the pull shot, and all of a sudden there's questions over his place because if he's in the side, it means that Jaiswal's not, it means that Gill's not, and so ensuring that players can still go out and play for the team when there is so much pressure from underneath is a challenge, but it's one they seem to be coping with pretty well at the moment.
On England, a constant thread throughout the series was their ability to play spin bowling. Varun Chakravarti had an amazing series. Bishnoi had some really good moments as well. Phil, what did you make of what Brendan McCullum said after the series? When asked specifically about spin, he said, at times we've been a touch tentative. We want to keep trying to apply pressure, particularly when they've got such a good batting lineup. You don't really have a time where you can just take time out of the game. 4 or 5 years ago in T20 cricket, it was like that. And I think we've seen it evolve so quickly that there is now no dead time. What do you make of those comments? Because on the one hand, looking at England against spin this series, I don't think your first instinct is they need to go harder. But equally, Gambia said after the series, India are trying to score 250, 260 on the reg. If that's what your opposition are doing, what McCullum is saying at the end of that point isn't unfair, that you don't really have time anymore against the best teams when they are operating at that level.
But the truth lies somewhere in the middle. Sure, there's never dead time, but there is quieter time, and it might be quite a short space of time, but it's still available to you. And sure, you want to be trying to push on, and you want to be trying to create something vast at all times, but you also have to recognise that there are times when the pitch doesn't allow for it, that overhead conditions or underfoot conditions, as in when you say you're batting first in India at a certain time in the evening. All of these factors have to play a part. And also, crucially, you don't always bat first. So you're chasing what you're chasing. You're chasing the target that has been set to you. Now, I know this sounds like kind of Jackanory stuff, but it sometimes struck me when I was watching England, certainly in that pivotal game, I think the fourth game, when they'd got to 2-1 and they should have chased that target down. They were in a good position. They'd started well. They were 60-odd with, I think, a ball to go.
Yeah, 62.
In the power play. 62
without loss after 5.5.
And then Duckett hit one up in the air. And albeit, he's hit a lot up in the air. But again, just take a beat. And the best players, they recognise there's a certain moment where you just have to just pause just for a second, just assess where you're at and recognise that you just got to get through that next stage. T20 cricket, when you're batting, is broken down now into very distinct pockets and matchups and all that sort of stuff. And the six overs is a period of play in and of itself, and the middle overs is a period of play in and of itself, and then obviously the death and so on and so on. Now, you recognise when a bowler is having a day or having a series, and Harry Brook, who played beautifully on that one occasion and looked skittish, but I don't mind skittish on the other occasions. I don't mind, to be honest, if they hit it up in the air and get caught along on when the hit is on. But when you're facing a bowler as good as Varun, who is as good a bowler as you've seen at that level, certainly in the form he's in at the moment, and you're almost seeing him out, and you've played him so well in that particular over. I think we certainly stuck him for 1-6. I think maybe it's certainly a 4 and a 2. Double figures with one ball to go. I think of his whole spell. I think he bowled 3.5 overs. And Varun's nobody's fool. And he knows that Brook is going to be looking to do something. And so he just takes a bit of pace off the ball. And he does him. And Brook tries a ramp, is caught on the 45. And as soon as that happened, I went out. Because I knew England had lost straight away. And I think then they lost another one very quickly after that. But I can't even but I knew that they'd lost.
Cast played a similarly ill-advised shot off Varun in the same over.
Yeah, okay. It was the last 3 balls for spells. It was 0 for 28 going into the last 3 balls.
I didn't even watch that last 6 or 7 overs because that was the key moment. He's your best player. I know the numbers aren't there, but you don't bat 4 in that side and be back to the extent that he has in T20 cricket and be bought for loads and loads of money by the franchises. They know what they're looking at. That was the moment. And that's where the message to the press might be understandable, but the message in the dressing room can't be that. Surely it can't be that.
I think specifically on those 2 shots is that philosophy I totally understand in T20 more generally.
More generally, sure.
But in this specific team who are struggling in these conditions with actually not many guys in form, right? So Duckett was in form, Buttler was in some nick, and during that innings, Brook was. Even though England were ahead of the game when Duckett and Salt were in, Salt was actually struggling for rhythm. You were wondering, even though England were miles ahead of the rate, actually who is scoring the runs here?
And the answer is
had
Brook.
to have been Brook and Duckett, right?
Exactly.
So those guys, when Brook gets out, they're 5 down, and in a normal situation with a slightly different balance of side, that team is still very much in the game. But I agree with you. When Brooke was out there, you felt that was it. Brooke and Duckett had to score more runs in that game, which is not how T20 cricket is normally played nowadays and the general philosophy of it. But those guys in those instances, I think, had to show a bit more responsibility and I take ownership of the situation.
Yeah.
But sorry,
but just on that particular game, which was the only game that England. Sorry, they batted second in the final 2 games, but they batted first in the first 3, lost 3 tosses in a row. That was the pivotal game, and so it's worth focusing on that, I think. Harshit, as you've said, came in under rather spurious circumstances. But anyway, Brooke was going to fancy, even though he's clearly good, he's going to fancy a bowler bowling 85 mile an hour on a pitch that is coming on when he's playing well and he's in. He's going to fancy that. The most glaringly problematic thing for Brooke is how he's going to play the bloke who's got him out 2 in 3 in the build-up to that game. And the whiff of hubris that hangs like a sort of like Ben's trainers over the England side at times. It was just another example, and you know how fond I am of Harry Brook. You know how much I rate Harry Brook. But in that particular moment, you're looking for a statement innings, such as he made in the 50 over stuff in September against Australia, where he was icy and he got it done. That was the moment. And if they'd gone 2-2 into that series, in that series, then whatever happens in the 5th game, they've had a good turn. I would say. As it stands, it looks like they've been wiped out a little bit, and I'm not sure that's a full reflection. Clearly, they're an inferior side to India's, Globetrotters, sure. But I don't think there's an enormous amount of daylight between them player for player. I think England are a very dangerous T20 side. But they're not making smart decisions at certain moments. And the beauty of T20 cricket is that everything is amplified. You have 120 events per hour and a half. And while Test cricket, you watch it all, there are periods where you can make things up. You can allow for mistakes. You can allow for quiet times. In T20 cricket, everything is ramped up. And so every single decision has to be on point. And that's the level that they're working at, right? They don't have the players to come in against world-class spin and then just take it on from there. Jacob Bethels will get there one day, but he's not there yet. Cass, Overton, they're too high against top quality spinners. The frustration is that you look at that series and I think Brooke made 90 odd runs and Duckett made something like 100 and something runs. They're your 2 best players in that side with Joe Root not in it.
Butler as well.
And Butler as well. Sorry, Butler, yeah. Butler played well and comfortably England's highest run scorer. But you look at those 3, they're your only real match winners. They're the only players that you fancy really against good quality spin. And so it's frustrating that they touch the edges of it without really.
It's a broader question that we'll return to, I'm sure, in the ODI series and maybe even the Champions Trophy as well. But the implication that is an intent problem rather than just a pure skill one.
Is it kidology though? Do you think with McCullum saying that again in the press?
Well, I guess I was trying to work out what McCullum's
Tourette's thing.
But,
go harder.
But you made the point before we started recording that this is just now the blanket thing. Coaches in English cricket they just say it.
Yeah,
regardless of what's actually happened, they just say, "Yeah,
we got to go harder." Yeah, but I was trying to work out what his rebuttal would be to the specific points, which I think are all completely valid. And the only thing I could think was if you go back to the 3rd game, the one that England did win, is you had a passage there where England had lost maybe 2 wickets in an over, and then Bishnoi comes on and he's bowling to Liam Livingstone, and Livingstone hits him for 3 sixes, and that's kind of the passage. Obviously, Wood and Rashid sort of wangle some runs at the end, but that's the passage that gets them up to 170, which is an eventually winning total. And it's can you back your players at some point to play the situation, to play out a bowler, while at other times allowing them the freedom to, when they've lost 2 wickets and the game is kind of in the balance and you're up against a leg spinner, which is traditionally what you've struggled against, to go and try and hit them for 3 sixes and then win your side the game in that passage of play. And that's just the challenge of being a coach, and the thing that McCullum is going to have to kind of navigate, because as you say, like that aggression in some ways won the 3rd game and then lost in the 4th game. Can you find the balance that allows you to play it as you see it at some points and to throw caution to the wind at others, I guess.
As good as Abhishek Sharma was, and he was absolutely brilliant.
I love his style.
He's amazing, isn't he?
The way the direction the hands come out. I don't think I've ever seen a player quite as extreme. I think I said this a few weeks ago. You have players that take the bat up to second slip, to gully even. No one takes it up to cover point. And yet it creates that angle and that flow so he can take you anywhere. He's just extraordinary to watch. But also, for all that, when he hits you through extra cover, it's perfect. And it's quite still as well. And he has this particular signature shot against the quicks where he stands up on his toes, literally, and hits you at the top of the bounce with a straight bat through again, extra cover. And the really, really good players, they just hit you a bit straighter because they see it a little bit quicker. And he is one of them. I'm fascinated to see where he gets to.
You can't level any accusations against him about not being good against pace, given England's makeup of the side. The one thing I did think, the TNT socials team put out a video of all 37 balls of his innings, and it really is crystallised in this video. Why didn't England bowl straighter?
Well, they did in the previous game, or certainly one of the previous games, when Wood smashed him on the pads right in front.
And Cast actually had a lot of success some success in this game against Sharma bowling straighter. And I just couldn't work out what England were trying to do.
I've been confused by some of the plans generally. I've been confused by how they've used Joffa at certain points as well, when he's been banging it in and been clobbered more often than not. And
that's not how he's had success in white ball cricket before. You know, he's
exactly.
had. There was that IPL during COVID where he was the player of the competition
under a run of ball,
and he's unplayable with a new ball.
And he's bowled that kind of that hard length and that perfect line, just constantly, kind of like almost like Test match style stuff, pretty much. And yeah, he was unplayable. Yeah.
Question from Matt Ben. Does the T20 series versus India again show that the Baz ball obsession with pace/short pitch bowling and the aggressive, borderline reckless batting will work against lesser opposition but will not succeed against the very best teams, in brackets, even when they field just the 11 players and not 12? By the way, it was so funny when Butler said our 4 impact players today are the bench. But good to see Butler smiling, of course, as well. But I guess generally, focus on the bowling part of that. It's fair to say this England attack is one-dimensional. With Rashid aside, they are all right-arm seamers who bowl at a similar pace. Do you think there's anyone outside this group who might improve this bowling lineup, specifically in India as well?
Possibly. I mean, it's an amazing position for England to be in. Like, normally when talking about the one-dimensionality of an England attack is because they're all sort of medium fast, 130 kilometers an hour.
To be fair, we were praising McCullum earlier on in the series for actually being a bit inventive, sticking to their guns a bit, not looking at condition, not being dictated by conditions, and trying to play to their own strengths.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, so okay, I guess two players out of the side, and we've mentioned Joe Root before, so we don't need to talk about that. But I think he would bring an interesting balance to the side because of the bowling, as much as he lengthens the batting and obviously gives them that sort of that nuance, I guess, in how they go about it. And then there's something that Matt Roller mentioned last week, but I think the Sam Curran thing is an interesting one as well. I mean, he is, couldn't be more different really to that bowling that they've picked, in that he bowls with his left arm. It's a bit slower. There is there's more variation there. He's got a bit of a bag of tricks.
Can I just add in the brackets there? He's a good player of spin.
Well, that's
he's a natural player of spin. He takes you down the ground nicely on the floor, and he hits a very clean ball. He also has a left-handedness that only Bethel can offer in the middle order. I'm baffled by his current omission from all squads, all white ball squads. I'm surprised by that.
Yeah, and he's had a good ILT20 tournament, if that means much. I guess it means a bit. And I guess the tricky thing is with him is that I think if you're going to pick him, he does have to play at 4 or 5. And England have decided, I think, he's not in their best top 5 at the moment. But I guess given how Brook and Livingston went in this series, there is more of a question about that. So he's one. And then, I guess Bethel's the other one as well. He's obviously in the squad, but didn't get as much.
Going back to the bowlers, though, I mean, Reece Topley, I think he was injured in the Caribbean tour. I think he came home early from that. Yeah, he did. Yeah, he had a knee injury.
Yeah.
But he was omitted from the Champions Trophy squad, perhaps because of injury. I don't know, but he would offer something different. He's a bowler that I quite like. You know,
Top,
and his numbers are good. His numbers are pretty good.
I put Top in a Mahmood bracket of someone who I think is a better 50 over bowler than 20. But yeah, it's a fair point. I mean, the interesting one, and it's been a while since we talked about it on the pod, so he's due a mention.
I forgot. I didn't realize you were teeing me up.
I was trying to be as leading as possible in the question. Liam Dawson averages 14 with the ball and is going at 5 runs and over in the SA20. He is consistently very good in all the leagues other than the IPL. As a old-fashioned finger spinner who whacks it at the end at 7 or 8, he would offer England something more than they currently have, at least by being in the squad.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Alistair Cook was also singing his praises, saying that he should be in after the end of the 5th T20I, speaking on TNT. And yeah, I agree. And it's such a weird situation with Dawson where it kind of just seems like, I guess there's a couple of things going on. One is that he's obviously not like a high, they love these high ceiling picks. It's almost like it would be too straightforward in some ways for them just to go and pick the guy who has amazing numbers in every cricket that he plays, but is also not super exciting, I guess. But then also there's the kind of feeling that they need to kind of sit down and just thrash it out and make sure that both are interested in each other, basically. You have like Dawson sort of saying it sometimes, like, don't want to go and run the drinks, and England say we don't want to pick him just to run the drinks, but actually there is a case at some points that he could be not just a drink runner, but the guy who the drinks are being brought on to, So yeah, I'd be very keen to see him get involved at some point, because also the other thing is, like, there's a sense with him that you can kind of plug him in, you know exactly what you're going to get, but you also need to work out what a team looks like with a guy inside it and how all those things all the parts fit together, even if you know what the quality of a player is. And I think, we've seen that in the past where he kind of comes back into a squad for a global tournament having not been involved in the lead-up.
I think England would be a stronger side in this series if you had Dawson instead of one of Overton and Carse. I think Overton and Carse are too similar as players. I think, and also Dawson is a better conventional batter than both of them. So like when England are 5 down, he's not your ideal T20 number 7, but when you're 5 down in the 12th over, he's not a bad guy to have to plug in there.
Yeah, I reckon they're desperate for Bethel's left armers to be developed, but he's just not there yet from what I've seen.
I think he's miles off.
Yeah, well, I watched him obsessively in the Big Bash thing, and he was given some big moments. He opened the bowling as well in one game in particular, but bowled some important overs and just doesn't have the accuracy or anywhere near the accuracy as yet. I mean, he's clearly not bowled very much yet, and he may yet come through as a bowling option. But yeah, they are light. If you look at that ODI squad for the Champions Trophy, not just for this India three match series, then it's glaringly obvious. You have Adil Rashid and then an Ocean, and then you have Liam Livingstone with his effective quixotic stuff, and then you've got Jacob Bethel, and that's it. As a makeup of your side, you're leaning far too far towards medium fast mediums, hit the pitch. Now, in certain occasions that might work. And the game that England won, they overpowered India, and they bowled very well, and Wood was in particular very, very good. And suddenly they found themselves 60 for 4 because they were overpowered. But that worked 1 in 5, really.
Yeah.
Maybe 2 in 5. They should have won one of the early, or they could have won one of the early.
And to be fair, in that 4th game as well, that...
You just need a bit more variety, that's all.
Yeah, but that Mahmood triple wicket, maiden up top. England did have them 60 off for 5, and an amazing partnership from Dubé and Pandya to got them back in the game.
Sorry, but that triple wicket maiden was kind of eccentric, wasn't it? There was... Samson caught in the boundary, and then
mad shot from Tilak first up.
Yeah, Tilak just ran down the pitch, was caught a deep third.
And then Sky falling into a trap. Yeah.
But that was an amazing field, by the way.
That was really good.
2 slips, leg gully, short leg under the lid, and a catching mid-wicket. So 5 genuine catches.
It was real Saturday afternoon stuff, wasn't it? We've got 2 quick ones. Let's get everyone in. Yeah. And he fell for it. But yeah. Look, it's the Dawson thing. Without dwelling on it, is increasingly hard to understand that he's played no role whatsoever as he gets better and better across all the formats. And it's almost like a pride thing now, I think.
And it's also a different conversation now that Moeen Ali's not in the picture.
Yeah.
Anyway, moving on. The ODI leg of the tour starts On Thursday, India look a little bit different. Kohli and Rohit are back in the fold, though Varun Chakravarti has been added to the ODI squad and could potentially make his ODI debut. How's he gone in domestic 50 over cricket, I hear you ask? He averages 14 with the ball, 1-4 in domestic 50 over cricket. From an England point of view, Jamie Smith is out of at least the first 2 games of the series, so likely that we see Bethel in at 7. Next up, we hear from someone who might once more be involved with England squads later this year. I reckon this is one of the most interesting interviews we've had on the pod in a while. Katya chatted to Tom Banton, who's out at the Isle T20 at the moment, having a barnstorming tournament, 200s and an 80-odd already. He talks about an excellent year that he's had in all formats. He was excellent for Somerset in the championship. He talks about rediscovering his love for the game, the perils of being elevated into the international setup so quickly, hating cricket for a while, loving playing for Somerset, and batting with the Spice Man, Andre Fletcher.
Well, I think we've got to start with yesterday, the 100 you scored. You're definitely seeing it pretty well at the minute.
I guess so, yeah. I know kind of how cricket works, so you can't really take it too much for granted. But yeah, obviously an amazing feeling. Obviously we're under a bit of pressure as a team to, we just come off the back of 2 losses and obviously we needed a win. So I think that was the most rewarding bit about the day is obviously me and Spiceman putting on a big partnership and then obviously the bowlers doing their job really well. So yeah, it was a good evening.
Early on in that innings, I think you were 8 off 15 balls, and it seemed like you made a pretty definite decision to target the leg spinner in Nathan Souter.
Yeah, we've spoken a lot about kind of giving yourself a chance here. Obviously, sometimes it can be a bit tricky early on. I think yesterday I hit the fielders a few times, which is sometimes the case. And I think in the past I probably would have given my wicket away a bit easier, whereas now as I feel I can catch up towards the back end. And me and Spiceman just kept talking about just keep batting and it's only going to become easier. Because there were probably a few overs where we were scoring at 6, 7 and over. They did bowl really well through the middle, and sometimes they're allowed to do that, and you have to respect that. And then I think there was a few overs towards the end that we got quite a few runs. So yeah.
Reflects where you are with your batting at the minute, where before if you were in that position where you're 8 or 15, you might have got a bit more frustrated and attempted a shot that you might not want to attempt.
Yeah, I think there's especially T20 cricket, you've got to take risks and sometimes it's going to come off and you look like the best player in the world and sometimes it's not and everyone thinks you're the worst player. So it's such small margins and just I feel like I've got a bit more of an understanding now about my game and how I'm going to approach T20 cricket. Some days you get off to a flyer and you're like, wow, this is amazing. And sometimes other teams can obviously bowl really well, and you have to respect that. But obviously, also my role is to put pressure back on the bowlers. Some days that's going to come off, and more often than not, it's not. So, but yeah, luckily yesterday it came off, and I think the most important bit, like I said, was us winning, and now we can try and get on a roll moving into the finals.
That's your second century in 5 games. You scored 102 off 55 balls last week as well. You're in a similar situation in that innings where I think you were none off 7 balls at the start, and then you got a shot away off Madhushanka. Do you have a release shot that when you're in that situation you can play and think, right, it's on here?
Probably feel like I have to get on with it, but not really. I kind of tell myself a lot just to play the ball on its merit. Don't force things and premeditate things like I felt like I used to for a period of time. So yeah, just you've got to give yourself a chance, but also you've got to take risks as well. Some days you're going to hit one straight up and it's just not going to come off for you. But luckily the last few games it's gone my way and hopefully it can continue all the way through to the final if we get there.
What was the point yesterday where you thought, right, everything's going here?
What was the point? I think when South came on, I obviously thought I've got to take a bit of a risk here to kind of get my innings going. And then I think there was a 3 overs we'd hit for 70 runs or something someone mentioned after. So look, I've always like to speak to myself now and tell myself that you're only ever 2 balls away from being back ahead of the game. 2 sixes, 3 sixes in a row, and things look a lot different. So kind of just backing myself, knowing that I can do that. And sometimes it's not all as easy as just going out there and just smacking the ball wherever you want to. Like they're allowed to bowl well, and you have to respect that sometimes.
Just lastly on that innings, the other thing I was thinking when I was watching yesterday was those sixes off Dan Lawrence. Regardless of the timing that you had, there was a significant amount of power put on those sixes. Is there an element there of almost making sure you're fully committing to the shot, whereas at points in the past you might not have fully committed to the shot?
I wouldn't say so. I just feel like I have more understanding of where I want to hit certain bowlers. I think other teams have an understanding of where I'm looking to score, so I'm always looking to improve. I feel like my offside game's improved a lot. And yeah, I just Spiceman. I think obviously at that stage in the innings, we were looking to go every ball, and we probably were trying to hit the ball a bit too hard. And we came down after the first two balls and said, just keep your shape. And look, I just watched the ball and played it on its merit and didn't really premeditate. And yeah, luckily it came off for me. And then obviously we finished really well, and then the bowlers did amazingly, so that was good.
On the ILT20 more generally, you played 3 matches in the BBL last year now, where you had a top score of 19. What about this league, the ILT20, or what other factors freed you up?
No, nothing's different. I think sometimes that's just cricket. I felt like I played well in Australia. I just had a few dismissals where I got caught in weird places, and that's just cricket. At the end of the day, we're not robots. We're not going to do well. People aren't going to do well every game. So just kind of accepting that that's how it is sometimes, especially as a top order batter. You're going to go through a few games, well, possibly a longer period of time than you want of bad form, and that's just how it is. And just kind of sticking to the process of what's got me here, and just really trying to believe in that, and not go away from it. So I wouldn't say there's been really a difference. Obviously the wickets are slightly different, and the 4-over power play in Australia, I feel like it makes it harder now as an opener, especially as the boundaries are a lot bigger to kind of here in England. So I think you have to kind of go about your innings a bit differently. So no, but it was, look, I love Australia, I love Big Bash. I maybe didn't get the big score that you want and that everyone wants, but that's just sometimes cricket and how it works. So
you were at MI Emirates this year, which is a change from Desert Vipers last year. How have you found working with head coach Robin Singh?
No, Robin's been really good. Him, Nicky, and Polly have kind of always said to me, if you fail, that's fine, because that's going to happen. But if you get in, really make the most of it. And I think that's something I've really tried to keep reminding myself if I'm in. Obviously, when the ball's there to be hit, properly hit it. And then when it's not, rotate the strike and hit the gaps and hit two. So it's something I've really thought about a lot. And the whole franchise always talks about a matchup. And if that matchup comes on, then really try to take it down. And then if you get out, then so be it. So yeah, it's something I've kind of thought about a lot, and kind of thank Nicky quite a bit, because he's not said too much, but I think just at times he's just said the things when it's needed. So
I guess Gardner is not a bad guy to have as a sounding board.
Yeah, no, Polly's been good. I've played against him quite a bit now, and Nicky. So to be on the same team as them is pretty special. I think obviously you probably take it for granted a little bit at times playing with these guys, and if you take a step back, you actually think I'm lucky enough to be playing with probably the greatest ever T20 player ever, and then probably the one who's number one at the moment in the world. So when you take a step back and you look at it like that, it's pretty cool. I think one of the first games I batted with both of them, and I was like, stood at the other end, and I was like, wow, this is pretty surreal. So yeah.
Do you still get that? Because obviously you've been playing in these leagues a while now, but you would have grown up watching guys like Pollard around the world in the different leagues.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I don't make it that obvious, but for sure, like I'm sitting in the change room, I'm sat next to Polly, I've got Poran the other side of me, and it's like, wow, this is surreal. If you kind of think of it like that, obviously you want to try and learn off those guys, but not badger them with loads of questions, because they're obviously here as well to do their own job. But look, they've been great. They're very open to helping and supporting. And yeah, there's a running theme at the moment that I keep getting run out. So the boys there's a bit of banter flying around about that.
Speaking more generally, 2024 was a massive year for you. You were one of the leaders in the Blast, averaged pretty much 50 in the championship. I think it's fair to say you weren't at those kinds of levels in the couple of years leading up to that. What can you pinpoint as the reason that change happened for you?
I just think obviously everything kind of started out, I was just a professional cricketer playing in the second team, and then 6 months later I was playing for England, and I was getting compared to all these sorts of players all around the world and playing in all these competitions and getting etc. And I was like, this is crazy. Like a year ago I had just signed a contract and I was not even sure about cricket, and then within a 12 months, 18 months, I was here, there and everywhere playing for England, playing against all these great guys I've watched on TV. And was I ready? I don't know. I mean, I'll never know. But look, it was a great learning for me, and it's probably put me in a good place. And it's taught me a lot about myself, not only cricket, but just away from cricket. I love cricket for what it gives me, but if I have a bad day now, I'm not coming into the change room, throwing my gloves and kicking off. I kind of just trust the process now and do as much training as I can, and kind of hopefully that turns into good performances for me in a game. But if it's not to happen for a few games, not to start overthinking. I guess you always do as a human naturally, especially in cricket. But I think I've just been training better, more efficiently. I've gone away from a few things and started doing new things. I've seen a lot of other guys doing some stuff. So yeah, I don't face sidearm anymore. For example, I felt like that's just put like all my rhythms and balance and everything. Yeah, so that's gone completely. And just trying to weird face more bowlers. Which is something I didn't really used to do in the past. But yeah, I guess that's just growing up, and everyone goes through it as cricketers. We're not robots at the end of the day. You're not going to just perform consistently for however long you play. And yeah, it's been it was a weird few years, but something I look back on now, and like I said, has taught me a lot about myself away from cricket and in cricket. So,
do you feel like the Kevin Peterson comparisons are unhelpful?
I mean, obviously you log onto Twitter and you see you used to read that stuff and I was like, wow, that's pretty surreal. And then look, you can't complain if you're being compared to those people, but I think if it was to happen to someone else now, I'd like to kind of not get involved but try and maybe help them out. And because loads of people have been there, everyone's been there, I've been there, and it was horrible. I hated cricket. I didn't really enjoy playing it. I kind of just had to do it because it was a job. And I feel like when you talk to everyone who's played a lot of cricket for a long period of time, there's moments in your career where you kind of fall out of love with it a bit, and then you find it again. So yeah, look, it was just a weird time in my career, I guess. But look, I have no regrets, and that's just how it is sometimes. So.
Do you look at people in the England setup now, or younger players like, for example, David Bethel, and think, God, I hope they have good people around them so that they don't go through something like that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really think too much about that stuff. I'm sure people like that have got really good support around them. I'm not saying like people need to feel sorry for me or it was the worst time ever. Look, that's just how it is sometimes. But I think sometimes social media is obviously a huge thing of everyone's lives now, and things can get quickly taken out of context very quickly. And that's just how it is. I guess sometimes you can't really do much about that. But yeah, I think, it's a tough one, I guess, but you've got to deal with it, haven't you?
And with your form last year and your form now, it seems like the bright lights of England might not be too far away again.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I don't know. I kind of, ever since I haven't played for England, I've not really thought too much about it. Obviously, the team is so strong, and so are really good players, and really good players who aren't even there as well. So for me, I'm finally back to enjoying cricket. I mean, I think it really changed this time last year when I came over here. Well, I was with this team in SA, and then I came here for the IL with with Dubai Capitals, for a few games, and found a bit of form. And I kind of speak very closely with Sam Billings. He's kind of my life advisor, I call him. We joke about it, and he's someone I probably speak to 3 times a week. And yeah, he was there with me, and we spoke a lot. And he's always guided me ever since probably bursting onto the scene when I was about 19, 20. So I have to thank him a lot. He's always, whenever I'm in London, I'll always see him, or I'll always video call him twice a week. So yeah, things kind of, I feel like, clicked back into gear probably a year ago. And look, you need a bit of luck, and along the way, you need to get dropped a few times. You need those small margins to go your way, like I said. But look, I'm enjoying cricket, I guess. It helps when you're doing all right. But yeah, I'm looking forward to getting back to Somerset. I love playing for Somerset, and we've obviously got a really strong team now, and we're competing across all 3 trophies, and we came so close last year, so hopefully we can get over the line in something this year.
And just briefly to finish up, I just wanted to ask you about the NOC changes that the ECB have brought in this year. you've been open that you've sometimes contemplated a future for yourself in franchise league. How have you kind of followed and seen the NOC kind of debacle?
Yeah, I mean, there was a WhatsApp group created, I don't know, 2-3 months ago, and it all kind of things are being said, etc. I mean, I don't really take too much. I'm still 26. I want to try and play as much cricket as I can across all three formats. And obviously, look, franchise cricket is growing. I'm not going to lie and say if an opportunity comes up, I'm not going to go and take that. I think you'd be stupid not to, or you'd be lying if I was to say, oh no, I'm not going to go and do that. Because also you've got to think about down the line setting up for post cricket. But look, I love playing red ball cricket if that's one of the bits to it. I think obviously there's times, don't get me wrong, when it's really hard and you're like, wow, this is hard, and you go through 2-3 games of no scores. But then, for example, last year when we beat Warwickshire on the last day, chasing 400 and I'm playing with all my best mates. And then when we play against Surrey and we won in the last hour, I mean, those are moments that are like, you'll never ever be able to recreate that in any other environment. And yeah, just to be, especially saying that Surrey game, for example, just obviously what happened with my ankle was gutting, but just to see how everyone else out there in that last hour, those are just like the moments for me that will just stick with me forever. So yeah.
But as someone who's played in the PSL before and done pretty well in the PSL, but someone who currently doesn't have an IPL contract, does it frustrate you that the PSL isn't an option for you, even though other players are allowed to go and play in the IPL?
I mean, I don't really get too caught up with all that. I mean, I'm happy just to be playing for Somerset. Obviously, the PSL and IPL is a great experience and it's a great opportunity. But yeah, hopefully I can just keep performing, and I feel like that stuff kind of takes care of itself. If you get too caught up with it all, I feel like it goes further away from you. So I'm just enjoying being here. Then I'm moving into a new house when I get home, which is quite scary. So I've got to I'm sorting all that out at the moment. And then, yeah, back into pre-season with Somerset, catch up with all the boys. And then the English summer starts, which is, for me, is the most exciting time of the year. So,
well, I hope that all goes well, Tom, and best of luck with the rest of the IRT20. Cheers again for today.
No worries. Thank you very much.
Butch touched on it earlier on, and we're going to talk about this in a lot more detail in the next couple of months. But I just wanted to hear your quick thoughts on the 100 sale this week. That's a great noise to kick things off, but we'll keep it short today. The teams have gone for loads. The London Spirit was valued at nearly £300 million, which, as a reminder, is not that far off what the entire competition was valued at a couple of years ago. Even one of the, inverted commas, less successful franchises or teams in Welsh Fire were valued at 80 million. Question from Phil, will the 100 create sustainable wealth and investment beyond the fire sale of teams?
I think it certainly gives a large number, if not the majority of counties, a fair win for the next 10 to 15 years. That they would not have had anywhere near as much financial assurances without it. Anyone got a tin hat in the room? I may as well wear that for the rest of the day, because I know how that's gonna sound, but it's hard to argue against that, I think, because not just the Test match counties are inoculated from the financial challenges of English cricket. You saw Durham get hit hard. You've seen Yorkshire be bailed out. It's not just the so-called small ones, but the small ones are very important. And my feeling has been throughout this, and I say it through gritted teeth, that, and I've spoken as well to a lot of CEOs of these smaller counties and chairs of these smaller counties. I've spoken to Ashley Giles, for example, who's sort of CEO at Worcester, and he's on the record saying, this is essential to our future. And there is a leap of faith involved in receiving the guarantees that the money will trickle down to the places that it needs to trickle down to. But that seems like it's already been outlined, and that 10% of the money will go straight to the recreational game as well. And you hope it doesn't get lost down sofas and you hope it goes to the right places. But I don't think the ECB is doing this to try and pull the wool over anybody's eyes. The ECB recognises that the game is on its knees at recreational level. The game is on its knees in schools. There is a need now for significant financial heft. So how do you get that? How do you get that? Can you generate it internally? Well, there has always been the argument that if you market now that was a Freudian. If you market the blast in a certain way, and if you foreground it and you put it in the right places across the season, then that can do the job for you. I don't think that does the job sufficiently well. Even if we were to draw up a utopia-like schedule where that is absolutely the key part of it, I just don't think that does the job sufficiently well. I think the game is facing so many hardships that we don't talk about very much, really. I've been doing a lot of work regarding cricket in schools over the last few weeks for a big thing that I've been commissioned to write, and I'm speaking to local school secretaries, cricket secretaries. I'm speaking to people involved in cricket boards. I'm speaking to head teachers. I'm speaking to heads of PE. I'm speaking to people involved in county clubs, and they are all desperate for help and central support. You speak to anyone involved at a cricket charity, and their future hinges on central support. The ECB has been faced with a pretty stark choice, I think. The game has been so badly mismanaged for so long, and if there's one thing that keeps coming out of these conversations, by the way, with these people who have been involved, I've spoken to people who have worked in the ECB, who are working in the ECB, and who used to work in the ECB over the last 15, 20 years. If there is one message, the game has been so badly mismanaged for so long that they're trying to repair the damage that they wrought on their own game. One of the previous regimes, and I'm not saying which one in particular, but the one that took cricket off free-to-air TV, that regime was sort of asleep at the wheel for so long, and the game suffered so badly that the current crop have had to bet the house on a new tournament that they probably in their gut knew would be despised by the rank and file, despised by traditionalists, discredited and dismissed by so-called true cricket fans, of which probably I would count myself as one of them. But they had to do something in order to persuade the outside world. The outside world, the Indian-shaped outside world, the outside world that still loves cricket, and for whom cricket is not just a joy, but also a hugely lucrative enterprise. They had to look outside of our own borders, if you like, and find a way to persuade the outside world to come and play with us and come and inject some of their largesse into our own game, because it was not coming sufficiently well from inside of it.
Yeah.
And so they bet the house. They know that it's going to piss people off. It's the Faustian pact that they're prepared to take. And lo and behold, it's kind of worked.
Yeah, I think we are going to spend a lot of time talking about this before the start of the English summer. I think the only point I make is looking at the landscape of sports other than football, it's pretty amazing we've not lost a county, and this makes sure that doesn't happen in the near future. Yeah. I think that's quite a big deal.
And just on the guy's question, talking, because obviously this is an immediate cash injection, but it is fair to ask what happens when this sum of money sort of runs out. I guess one thing is the hope that this will make the 100 a better product, which therefore generates a bit more revenue by itself. But also, when you talk to some of these county CEOs, as Chair says, as Phil says, there's a feeling that that some of them, at least, like the more forward-looking ones, want to be doing future planning and future proofing, but their day-to-day is so focused on kind of keeping the wolves from the door. So you have counties like Sussex who were selling these sort of 15-year memberships to try and get sort of a bit of money in now to kind of mean that they could have a look beyond just the next few months, basically, or the next year. Similarly with Leicester, who have unveiled these big, lofty plans, not just for cricket side of things, but having a sort of a campus with a sports business sort of facility on there that can allow them to be kind of parts of the whole community, not just from a cricket sense, from a general point of view. And I think what this does is it gives those counties as well the opportunity to be like, okay, what do we want to look like in 15 years' time to be self-sustaining? And now it's kind of, in a way, obviously the East will help them out a bit, but it's up to them to take this kind of lifeline and run with it and come up with a vision individually for each of them for themselves, I think.
He's absolutely right, is Gardner. There are counties and county boards and local philanthropists in certain areas of the country who are desperate to address the problems and are facing them down. And there are interesting ideas at play. Academies, central hubs, charity-backed centres of excellence around the country to bring in a different type of demographic and all the rest of it. There are plans in place and there are ideas being thrown around, but it needs money. It needs money.
We will address this question several times before the season starts. So if you've got any more questions on it, get in touch at podcast@wisden.com. Another big news story this week. Nick Holt of The Telegraph writing that between Richard Thompson and Jay Shah, they will be leading a revamp for the World Test Championship ahead of June when the next cycle starts. I'm just going to read out some lines from Thompson in that interview.
You put this on the notes. I couldn't bear to open it.
It is fully understood that the current structure does not work in the way it should, and we need a fairer, better competition. But at this stage, no recommendations have been put forward. We have 5 months to work on this, step back and look at what the structure should be going forward. The World Test Championship should be fairer and more competitive. It is going to change to ensure it always encourages the best teams to reach the final, encourages other nations that want to play Test cricket to play Test cricket. We will protect, grow and ensure the integrity of Test cricket because the format is crucial to the DNA of the game.
Fascinating. A lot to unpick in that.
So I don't think the World Test Championship is by any means perfect. We talked about it a lot. I think we're all aligned on we want 3 test series and 4-day tests. Help that. There's not been a 3 test series between sides not involving the big 3 for 6 years now. That's a nonsense. That needs to change. But what I really don't like about this is the insinuation that the best teams haven't been qualifying for the final. Did anyone say this when India played Australia in the 2023 final? There's also an insinuation that England, let's be honest, that's what he's saying here, weren't encouraged to qualify, using Thompson's own words there. Did they do anything to not win any of the test matches in the cycle?
Or to bowl their overs a bit quicker.
Yeah. You know, the rules were made pretty clear. The other, I guess there is a disadvantage in being in the big 3 at the moment because you play a higher percentage of your tests against some of the best sides.
Not as big a disadvantage as being in the second tier.
Exactly.
When we are trying to encourage teams to play Test cricket, but you're saying, well, the greatest stuff you can achieve is to beat the 7th best side in the world. The mood music is towards a 2-tiered system.
100%. I really dislike the insinuation that it's currently unfair and that the teams aren't encouraged to qualify. England have looked embarrassing being on the outside of it over the last couple of years. Everyone else has been interested in it. It's been a party that everyone else has been interested in it and been involved in, and England haven't been in it because they've lost too many games. That is the only reason. And it's been, look back, England, Sri Lanka at the Oval. If you want to compare England's fixture list to South Africa, sure, South Africa's on paper is a little bit easier. South Africa, they won every game in their home summer to qualify. England had an on paper not particularly difficult home summer. They did not win every game in the home summer. South Africa, they beat Bangladesh in Bangladesh 2-0. England play Pakistan in Pakistan, who lost against Bangladesh at home, by the way. England lose that series 2-1. So the insinuation that South Africa don't deserve to be there, which is what he's saying, and that England haven't been encouraged to qualify, is just nonsense. Absolute nonsense. And I hope they come to a good conclusion. I'm not saying the WTC is perfect at the moment, but yeah, comments like that do concern me, I'll be honest.
Yeah, and again, it carries echoes of what Greg Barclay said, not fit for purpose. It's been strange to see how the powers and the architects of this idea that you'd be hard-pressed to really criticise as a concept,
they're its biggest critics.
Have been rubbishing it, consistently. Now, as you're saying, you're right. There are iniquities to it. and there are areas where you need to sharpen it up for sure. But it's almost like they're pissed off that they have to countenance it at times, and I just find that very, very, very peculiar. As you say, they've got 5 months to work on it. Hopefully, they can come to some kind of resolution that does not exclude and ostracize the have-nots. But I fear for it.
That's it for part. Hang on,
one of them.
2. But that's it for what I think is part. Actually, what was it? So you got Butch, us, Banton.
Keep this in, Dan.
That's it for part 4, I think.
It's like Hamlet,
and next up, part 5, other cricket. So there's a test match that happened this week, Sri Lanka, Australia. Australia absolutely walloped Sri Lanka, beat them by an innings and 242. Usman Khawaja scored 232. Steve Smith scored 100. Josh Inglis scored 100 on debut. And Matt Kuhneman, on his return to the side, took 9 wickets in the game. Brilliant result for Australia, whose recent record in Sri Lanka is poor. I think they've lost 4 of their last 5 test matches.
It was like a 90s test match. Watching that
series, what in terms of the way
we're just Australia, 600, relentless, remorseless, and then just got to work, and just beat you down.
Quite a few players in this game. I just reminded of how good they are. So Khawaja, for example, averages 60 in Asia. He has basically one of the best records ever for a visiting batter in Asia now over a pretty decent sample size.
Could I add just briefly on that? I didn't watch much of it. But I watched a good couple of hours with Todd Murphy bowling, and I thought it was an interesting comparison with him and Shoaib Bashir. And so I watched him trying to split screen him in my head as best I could. And it just struck me that, albeit the pitch was turning big, actually, this was on day 3, nonetheless, it looked to me like he was bowling a lot more threatening deliveries consistently than Shoaib was over the winter. And they're both young off spinners, both similar kind of style as well. But it looked like to me that Murphy's further down the line than Shoaib.
I think it's fair. Murphy, I think from the start, even when he's not taking a lot of wickets, it's pretty hard to get away. I suppose you'd say Murphy's trajectory of a ball, stock trajectory, is maybe not as deceiving as Bashir when Bashir gets it right. Murphy's a little bit flatter, I think.
I mean, he's had the best to work with, right? So he'd been watching Nathan Lyon.
He was the other person I was going to bring up. I know that
he's an artist. He's an absolute artist to watch.
There were a couple of wickets where you get the right-handers out, caught a short leg this test match early on, and you're like, oh, he is so good.
Yeah.
He is so good.
Yeah, and there's an inevitability about him as well, that he's going to get you.
And he defeats conditions as well. In that I know this pitch was spinning a bit, but it wasn't a Bunsen by any means. But I think the way he is constantly threatening in all conditions is extraordinary. And Steve Smith, still quite good. Mitchell Starc, also very good with the new ball in this test match as well. Australia, generally quite good.
Karunaratne's jacking it in.
He is, yeah. So this test match will be his 100th and final game of Test cricket. Brilliant career, averaging pretty much 40 over a really long period of time. Probably doesn't get as much love as he deserves, given his substantial career. And for a long period of time, I suppose, like, he's in that Dean Elgar bracket of opener, who's probably not quite an all-time great, but done so well for their countries in an era where they've not been as successful.
Yeah, would have been a World 11 player at times in his career, 100%. For sure. I guess and all it says that for Australia, it's a big test, the second one, even though it obviously qualified for the final. But the last time they were in Sri Lanka, they had these questions about them away from home. They won the first test big and then lost the second one big. And actually, they have generally started series, I think, obviously, taking the BGT out of it better than they finished them, I think. So I think that, and Lyon himself was saying, saying that we're not yet a great side, was what he said. They want to win in England, they want to win in India, but also it's actually winning series like this, even that they 100%. Have not got loads of under their belt. So it is still, the Sri Lanka side, I think, are pretty good at shrugging off this kind of thing. They just seem to not take too much too seriously, and that can work in their favour at times like this.
Yeah, they rarely get whitewashed. Question from Peter on the Patreon channel. So Peter he's based out in Australia, and he's been providing the patrons with regular updates from England Lions' tour of Australia. He's watched a lot of it in person. He asks, having watched it, what was the point of that tour? They picked a ridiculously unbalanced side with just 4 batters, a few all-rounders and a 16-year-old. How could they compete against serious Aussie cricketers? Well, they didn't. The biggest takeouts, positives, were that McKinney's seriously talented. Sam Cooke was the only pace bowler to have significant success, and he wasn't tall or fast. The pace bowlers were generally pretty toothless, and Bashir was completely ineffective as a spinner in Australian conditions. I mean, there's a lot to unpack there. I think positively, I think McKinney is a really interesting player.
I guess one mitigating circ is that there's a lot of players that would, in previous eras, be sitting at home on their Todd, who are now not, who are now elsewhere. And so you have to cut your cloth accordingly, perhaps.
They could have picked players
for sure. But
Josh Bohannon's not in the ILT20, for example. And just for
I guess they know him. And look, clearly as a competitive 11, it's not there yet.
Yeah, I mean,
nowhere near.
Just so that listeners are aware of what happened. So England Lions got thrashed. They lost by an innings, were forced to follow on, and the balance of the side was absurd. So you had Josh Tongue at 7,
Bashir at 8 or something.
Josh Tongue at 7, Bashir at 8, Flintoff at 5. At 6. So it was a really, really unbalanced team against a really strong Australia A side. That was closer to a second 11 out of the guys who are not out in Sri Lanka.
England team goes to Australia and it's a horrible mismatch.
Yeah,
shock horror.
Yeah, exactly.
But no, obviously there are legitimate points to be made on this. All I would add is that McCann and McKinney are considered to be probably the 2 best young top order players coming through in the England game. In the English game, they were both there. Matty Hurst is a good player at Lancashire. He was in the middle order, and Sam Cooke had a net good tour. So we can take the odd little kernel from it for sure. Josh Tongue was quite ineffectual, which surprised me.
Well, he's just barely played cricket.
Yeah, I guess
he just barely played cricket. I think for him getting overs under the belt is just the most important thing.
I think McKinney, you'll hear a lot more about him. He'll be playing the big stuff.
Yeah. I think we're going to have him on the podcast next week as well.
Well, you will be hearing a lot more.
So you're going to be definitely hearing from him then. Other bit of cricket this week.
Yeah, go on.
Virat Kohli played in the Ranji Trophy for the first
6.
time in 12 years. Yeah, got 6, which isn't a great return, but amazing crowds. Packed house at Delhi for his return. I felt sorry for the people who could only make day one because Delhi didn't bat until later in the day and they lost 1 wicket and Kohli was called to come in at 4.
Right, really?
And then also, I suppose, feel sorry for the people who came in for day 2 as well because they only took 15 balls.
I think Kohli gave some good value in the field.
Yes, he did. Yeah.
He does a bit of that kind of stuff.
He's good at the entertainment stuff, isn't he?
It'd be a useful overseas for a club, wouldn't he, in the top div of the champ?
Yeah.
Finally, Ben, the franchise roundup.
Here we go. Well, it's not been a hugely enthralling week on the field, so we'll get to that a little bit later on.
Can't start like that.
No, it gets good. The last few playoff spots have kind of been decided as a bit of a break before those knockouts. I think you should go and look it up if you want to see who's in which. But off field, it's been great. You've had some trademark cricket is broken competition hopping. So Tim David in the past week has played 5 games in 3 countries for a combined 26 runs off 28 balls. But there's also one that I found quite heartening, which was Dasan Shanaka flying home between 2 ILT20 games to help save his domestic first-class side from relegation.
That's lovely.
So, scored 100.
On the last day of that game, he smashed 123 off 87 before hightailing it to the airport, making the 4.5-hour flight back to Dubai.
Who is this?
Dasan Shanaka, and he played at T20 that evening. So
Yeah.
he smashed first-class 100 in the morning,
and
then
4-hour flight.
Yeah, 4.
The other thing, so my prediction for a scandal that's going to happen in cricket at some point in the next 5 years is there's going to be identity fraud. You see a name in the scorecard and it's just not that bloke.
Yeah,
it's just not that bloke. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, he got there and hit 34 of 12, so had a pretty good day.
Guy.
Pretty good day all around. The other end of the spectrum is Rangpur Raiders in the BPL, who had James Vince, Tim David and Andre Russell all turn up just for the eliminator in the competition, only for them to be bowled out for 85 and lose by 9 wickets. Between them, those 3 players made 12 of 25 balls, and Vince also barbecued his opening partner second ball. So that was good. And then elsewhere in the BPL, the Durbar Rajshahi non-payment furore is still rumbling on.
Is that their full name?
Yeah. Well, they can't find a sponsor, so they've got to go with something, yeah. You might remember last week there'd been strikes by both their overseas and domestic players at different times because they hadn't been paid. Since then, genuinely true. The bus driver has refused to drive the team bus because he hasn't been paid. They've been turfed out of a hotel due to non-payment. And the team's Facebook page has been taken down as well. So I think we have to assume the social media manager on strike as well. The Bangladesh Sports Ministry has said that Shafiqur Rahman, the team owner, has now vowed to clear the team's dues. But until the money hits Ryan Bell's bank account, we cannot be certain.
Amazing.
Very good.
Amazing. That's a very eventful week off the field. Anything else?
That's all I had did you have something that I've missed from franchise cricket this week?
I suppose the SA20 is coming towards its end.
Yeah, sure. But
Rashid Khan
Pal Royals lost in the eliminator.
Qualifier,
Sorry.
Yeah.
Not
Come on.
eliminator. Qualifier.
And Rashid Khan broke the all-time record for the
that's true.
most wickets in T20 cricket.
For Cape Town.
No, for all T20
but
cricket.
while playing for
Cape
Town,
yeah.
in the qualifier,
in the qualifier,
eliminator.
yeah, for the Mumbai Indians, Cape Town.
Yes.
Yeah, Rashid Khan, he now has 633 T20 wickets. He's clear of Bravo in second place. He's going to get 1,000 at some point or another.
What a moment that will be. Yeah.
Oh, actually, I was looking this up. So I was looking at how close Rashid Khan is to getting 1,000 professional wickets. And he's 150 or so off. He's got like 198 ODI wickets, which is actually, for someone of his era, loads. And he's going to end up really high on the ODI all-time wickets list. And I was looking at the breakdown of his ODI wickets, and he's taken 105 of his 198 ODI wickets just against Ireland and Zimbabwe. And I was looking up players who have absurdly good records against like one or two teams in ODIs, and the best player against a top tier opposition by a mile, although you could argue they were perhaps not top tier at the time, is Wakar against New Zealand. So Wakar averaged 14 against New Zealand in ODI cricket, but he did most of his work in 1990, where he took something like 20 wickets at 4. So in a 4-match sequence, he took 3 fifers, and it was about like 5 for 11, 5 for 14, 5 for 15.
Do you know he was the bowler I saw in my first ever first-class game that I watched live?
I did not know that.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
In 1989, maybe, or 88, something like that, at Chelmsford, bowling to Gooch for Surrey, running down the hill from the Hayes Close end. What a sight for a 9-year-old kid. Little wonder I fell in love with it, really.
I think my first day of live cricket was watching Butch bat against Sri Lanka.
Was it really?
Yeah, it was actually.
How many did he get?
He got 100.
Oh, that's a shame.
Yeah, I know. much better story if he didn't.
I went to watch Lashings against Aylesbury CC and met Richie Richardson.
Amazing scenes.
Amazing. I think I've definitely got the worst of those 3 stories. Anyway, that is everything for today's show. Well done for getting to the end. Cheers, Ben. Cheers, Phil. We'll be back for Patreon listeners tomorrow evening.